TIL former U.S. President Andrew Jackson was approached by a man who pulled a gun on him. The man pulled the trigger and shot at him but misfired. He then took another gun out of his pocket and pulled the trigger, but that gun also misfired. Jackson, who was 67 at that time, then beat him with his cane. If he was 67 then this happened about 5 years into his 8-year presidency. Evidently the Secret Service didn't exist until about 30 years after this happened. Never bring two faulty guns to a cane fight. Best part is that both of the guns were examined afterwards and were found to have nothing wrong with them. The odds of two guns misfiring like that for no apparent reason is so slim, it's ridiculous. He also declared war on Florida. And Teddy took a bullet and then proceeded to make an 80-minute speech making fun of the assassin. If you want to kill a public servant, Mr. Lawrence, I suggest you buy American. Stand-up comedian Joe Zimmerman, https://YouTube.b/3JRQWSQ1S0S, on the subject. Cue the Curb Your Enthusiasm music. Didn't Jackson have several bullets in his body from numerous duels, over the years? If you needed any more proof that karma doesn't exist. It's weird, 67 used to seem old to me, but now I'm 34 and my parents and in-laws are around that age and it just seems like prime, old man strength territory. I mean, why fuck with someone that's been through more shit than you? Back when I used a cane, I now need a walker. I was always hoping someone would fuck with me so that I could beat them with my cane. Andrew Jackson has so many stories like this, it's insane. He also committed genocide. Ultimate definition of plot armor. At the time of his death he owned approximately 150 slaves. Beating people was obviously something he was accustomed to. I want to also point out the assassin was beat within an inch of his life and people had to pull President Jackson off him. A damn shame. I fired and I missed, and then I fired again, and I missed. Andrew Jackson was such a piece of shit that even bullets didn't want to get near him. R/never tell me the odds. I'd say something about the devil's luck, but with this dude that's a little on the nose. LOL. You know what if Andrew Jackson just made up the story that the gun misfired and he was actually the one who shot the man? That's nothing. Read about the "You Can't Kill a Bull Moose" speech by Teddy Roosevelt. Fuck Jackson. Hero to racists across the country. My history teacher told me this story a decade ago. And that man was almost beaten to death by Andrew, if people didn't stop him. Reminds me of the scene in Schindler's List. It should be noted that Jackson needed to be physically restrained so he wouldn't kill the guy. Jackson also won like 100 duels in his life. This story would be really cool, but it's ruined by being about Andrew Jackson. The bullets were afraid of Andrew Jackson. Let's not forget this is a man who regularly murdered people who insulted him on the White House lawn and oftentimes wiped his ass with the US Constitution. So when you say, Trump is the worst POTUS ever, remember that if Jackson was POTUS right now he'd have shot Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden on the White House lawn and likely seized all the land owned by blacks in Minneapolis and told them to leave regardless of what the SCOTUS decided. Too bad. Andrew Jackson was a genocidal POS. They don't make canes like they used to. I didn't know high points existed in the 1800s. Jackson's aides had to pull him off of his would-be assassin in order to protect the man. And he beat him almost to death. He had to be pulled off of him. Andrew Jackson did not fuck around. It's too bad the guns didn't work. Jackson was a bad person for sure. A lot of presidents are bad, but to my knowledge Jackson was the first to be truly evil, both personally and politically. This likely isn't true. This version of what happened was put out by Jackson-friendly newspapers. Anti-Jackson papers said he swung at Lawrence, missed, and fell on his ass. What probably happened was that other members of the crowd wrestled Lawrence to the ground. Fuck Andrew Jackson, all my homies hate Andrew Jackson. It's an actual tragedy that both guns misfired. Jackson is the second worst president America has ever had. He needs them thug life shades on this pic. And then I fired again. And then I missed. And then I fired, and then I fired, and I missed. I missed both times. And then I fired. And I missed. You just go Jackson, Andrew Jackson said while beating this man, an inch from his life. Yeah, ha 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 ha, what a badass. Remember when he forced Native Americans out of their lands on the Trail of Tears? So badass. The Caned Crusader. AJ was a pretty big piece of shit too. Extremely racists against Native peoples. Orphan at the age of 15. He had an open house at the White House for his inauguration party, so all the common people got mud all over the fancy couches and he loved it. He had a cabinet but didn't care about them at all and instead discussed his issues with his old war buddies over a bottle. Guess he didn't think to bring a knife. That's why you always carry a backup and a backup. Amateur. Always keep your power dry. The lesson here is to never cheap out on critical tools. I think this says more about the shoddy craftsmanship of the guns than anything about President Jackson. How could you not include the fact that Jackson had to be pulled off of his attacker who was sent to the hospital? He ain't called Old Hickory for nothing. Only the decent ones get killed, the jerk-offs are bulletproof. Call an ambulance. But not for me. Jackson invented the assassination attempt. Also, he didn't just beat him with a cane, his aides had to pull him off the person. Oh, and his parrot had to be removed from his funeral because it wouldn't stop cussing. My turn. Jackson was a badass. Wait until you hear about his cheese. Man, guns used to suck. This cane is always loaded, motherfucker. Never bring a cane to a gunfight. Andrew Jackson, hold my ale. And that's how he got his nickname Old Hickory. Because his cane was made out of hickory wood. Beat him almost to death with his cane. FTFY. Also, AJ was a real bastard. He was frankly a murderous tyrant. https://www.gpb.org/Andrew Jackson. For the curious. I killed the bank is Jackson's famous quote. So the bank tried to kill him. Current president will probably pee his pants and start crying. Okay, but fuck Andrew Jackson. Native peoples are still suffering the consequences of his shitheadedness. He also killed a guy in a duel. This man is wild. He once had a duel on the lawn of the White House and gave the other dude the first shot. He was shot in the chest and proceeded to shoot the man killing him. He lived with that bullet in him until he died. Fuck Andrew Jackson. Man, in my early days on Reddit, I saw this same TIL, and thought Jackson was a badass. Grew older, learned more, and now I see this and just disdain. Jackson was an insane piece of shit, and somehow only the good is taught of him. The American way, I guess, antithetical to Mark Antony's eulogy of Caesar in Shakespeare's Julius Caesar, the evil men do lives on after them / the good is oft interred with their bones. Truly a tragic event. Fuck Andrew Jackson though. Remembered when presidents were badasses who didn't turn off the lights and hid in a bunk. From what I hear he had experience caning people. Source, I know a distant relation of his and she thought it was cool until she found out he was a slave owner. So there's that. Did any released slaves ever kill their former owners? Django was some pretty solid woke porn. Let's not forget that Andrew Jackson was a heinous pile of shit responsible for the deaths of countless Native Americans. D. Kane. He also committed genocide. Andrew Jackson was a goddamn lunatic, but the fact that his pet parrot had to be removed from his funeral because he was swearing too much brings me happiness daily. Did they not teach y'all this in school? I thought everyone knew this. The way I first recall reading this is a little different and Wikipedia is not terribly clear. I was under the impression Jackson did come at his would-be assassin with his cane, with the clear intent of beating his ass, but others intervened before he actually hit him. Still badass. Jackson was a pretty horrible person, but he was definitely a tough guy.